Welcome back to EP3. We make energy modeling easy. I'm Karen Walkerman, and in this tutorial, we'll continue with the multifamily residential building that we created in the last tutorial, and this time we're going to update that model using custom floor plans and elevations. As a reminder, this is the building that we're creating. We have a floor plan for the ground floor, and then the upper floors are slightly different. You can see there's some balconies and overhangs, and so the difference here is this bedroom is a little bit larger on the ground floor, and the upper floors it has a balcony. And we have a north and south elevation. So to get started, I'm going to open a new instance of SketchUp. I can use any template that I want because I'm just opening SketchUp. We'll give it a moment for it to load. Now I'm going to navigate to my wizard file that I created. So it's down here in my recent files. And in order to start working with it in EP3, I need to click one of these EP3 buttons. And it was quite quick, but there is a little dialog box that may pop up that gives you its progress on loading all of the EP3 information into memory. So if you remember, we have a multifamily residential building. We have residential apartments, residential circulation zones. This is 9 floors in total, with the bottom floor having a multiplier of 1, the intermediate floor having a multiplier of 7, and then the top floor. At the moment, we have a 4-pipe fan coil HVAC system, and this is our domestic water heating system over here. In this tutorial, we'll concentrate on building geometry. And what I would like to do to start with is I'm actually going to delete my walls and roofs and just be working with floor plans. So first of all, I'm going to hide my middle floor and top floor. And I can actually I can hide the roofs. Now I'm going to click into the building, and I can simply use the SketchUp tools to select the walls if I like. So I can select and then hit delete on the keyboard, and this will delete the walls. So now I have my floor here, and I want to trace over a floor plan. So if we go back to this other model here, I want to use this floor plan. So now I need to click all the way out of the EP3 site. So I want to go all the way out of the EP3 site so there's no dotted boxes. And I can also kind of zoom extents and make sure, and zoom out a little bit, make sure I'm all the way out of any EP3 objects. And then I can take this floor plan, and I'm just going to Control C and Control V and stick it in my model. I can stick it approximately where I want. And then I can right click on it, and I have an option here to say EP3 set floor plan. So I'm going to select that it will be the bottom floor. And it will align it with my building access and kind of stick it in the right place for me. I can, and once it does that, it will show up in your outliner down here on floor plan. So if you want to move it around, you can grab it and move it. Let's show the exterior geometry so I can see. So I can move it side to side a little bit if I like. But I'm fairly happy with its location. Well, maybe we can make it perfectly centered if we want. So I hit M to select move. I'm going to select this endpoint here. And now I'm going to move it until the red axis highlights, and then I'll hold the shift key down. So now it's locked in that axis. And now I can select, let's see if we can see the origin. I can select the origin here, and I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to select a midpoint, find that green axis, hold the shift key down, and select the origin. So now I have a perfectly centered floor plan that I can trace. The next step is to go into this bottom floor and start tracing the floor plan. At this point, it may be helpful to erase the existing floor plan. So I'm going to hit E and just use the erase tool to erase these edges. And then toggle the geometry so I can see everything. And let's see, I'm going to turn this off as well. There we go. And let's see. So I really like to use the rectangle tool while I'm drawing my geometry. There are a couple of settings in the building geometry outliner that are important while you're drawing geometry. We have a snap to grid, which we feel is important to help get very clean building geometry for energy modeling. The second is you have two drawing modes when you're drawing geometry in EP3. One is a drawing mode in which each shape you creates a new space boundary. You can also toggle this off, so if you need to, say, split the floor of a space and have different constructions on two sections. But for the moment, for now, when you're drawing your initial floor plan, make sure that the drawing button is highlighted so you're in draw space mode, and I recommend using snap to grid. Now you can change your grid snap settings in your model settings down here, and your building geometry spacing is showing up here. Now the model currently is in SI units, and I can switch it to IP to see that in meters. There we go. Toggle to IP, and you can see it's roughly 6 inches. Okay, so now I'm not going to worry too much about my zoning to begin with. I just want to get the footprint of the building. So I'm going to draw a series of rectangles that will give me my building footprint. And you can see here that SketchUp is kind of snapping to some random geometry, but because we have snap to grid, EP3 is overriding that snap and making some nice clean geometry for us. So you don't have to worry too much about getting everything exact. So here, I just created a rectangle here that I'm now going to erase this edge in order to follow the outline of the building geometry. So when you are interacting with the outliner, anytime you press over here, your shortcut keys on the keyboard stop working for a second. So in order to get them to work again, just click on the bar up top, and now I can press space bar to get the select, or R to get my rectangle tool. So I'll draw another rectangle here. And the graphics card is doing something very strange. There we go. And then here, we want to do, there we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back in and let's toggle this geometry. I can just erase all of these extra edges. So I'm zooming in and out using the scroll bar. If I want to, I can orbit by pressing and holding on the middle button of my mouse. You can also zoom by hitting Z, which gives you this magnifying glass, and you can orbit by pressing O. You can also pan by pressing H, and you can also pan if you hold the Shift key down and use the middle button on your mouse bar. That will also pan for you. Okay, so let's look at the floor plan again. So I have two two kind of holes in my building that I need to create. One there and one here. And we have this center area. Oops, I got a little section here. I need to adjust. There we go. And we have this center area, which is all circulation. We have the elevator and we have stairs and this hallway. So let's see, I'm gonna toggle that geometry on and off. And I can just create a rectangle here. And I'm going to be a little bit OCD and just move these walls over so everything's lined up. And same down here. I'll just move this wall. M is the shortcut key for moving. And then I also have this stairway, which is the same distance as this opening here. So I can do L and just create an edge here and here. And then I'll go in and erase these. You could keep the elevator room separately if you wanted to manage the loads differently, but you don't have to. Okay, the last step is that there are 4 apartments per floor. One here, one here, one here, and one here. And at this stage, I'm going to model each apartment as a complete zone. So I'm actually just going to draw a line from the center of each one. Now, as we've been drawing, the list of zones has updated and we can see it's giving a number, but the numbers are not sequential. And I'd really like it to start with 1 and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to open my selected object dialog, select the bottom floor, and click this button that says renumber spaces. And there we go. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also going to save this as its own file. So the next step will be to name these spaces so that they get associated with our space and zone templates. So I can select multiple spaces. So I've pressed the space bar to get my SketchUp select tool. I've selected my first space, my first apartment space, and then I will hold Control down while clicking on these other surfaces. These are going to be my residential apartments. So I will, well, actually, I should copy this first. I'm going to copy this text, residential apartments, and then I'll go back into that bottom floor and select those. And now I will right click and say rename spaces and paste in this residential apartments. This one is residential circulation. Right click, rename, residential circulation. Okay. So that is our initial custom floor. For the upper floors, because they are very similar to this initial floor, instead of maintaining the original intermediate and top floor, I'm going to copy this floor up. So I can just use the move tool and I'll hit Control So I get the little plus next to the move tool. So that modifies it. So now it's going to copy this floor. I'm going to go up until I get the blue axis here, and then I'll hold the shift key down and reference the existing intermediate floor, and then I'll click. And now I have this floor 1. So now I'm going to select this intermediate floor and hit delete and delete it. And that will get rid of the walls and everything else. Now I should be able to call this intermediate, or let's call it middle floor. You'll notice that the material changed. It's no longer the ground floor. So we have this middle floor has our default interior floor and ceiling construction. The ground floor will by default, anything that is at or below your 0 line will get an underground floor construction type. So this has an interior floor construction type. We will revisit that later because we actually want this to be an adiabatic floor construction. But before we move any further, let's go all the way out of our EP3 site because we're going to take the drawing for the middle and top floor, which is a little bit different if you remember. And we'll drop it into this model. So again, I'll right click and I'll say EP3 set floor plan, and I'm going to select middle floor. So it's aligned it, it's rotated it, but it hasn't set it on the same elevation and it hasn't aligned it with the other floor plan. So what I need to do is I'm going to go in and click on this upper floors drawing. So upper floors is the name of the actual object, and middle floor is actually the layer that it's on. It's associated with the middle floor here. So I can just select it and I'll choose a reference point. Let's see what, maybe I'll just choose the center of this X right here. And I'm going to move it and just place it right on top of here. The next step is I want to see the other geometry and I'm going to change the elevation. So again, move and I'll drag it until I get the blue vertical axis. Hold shift down and bring it up. There we go. I will turn the top floor off again and I'll go into the middle floor and let's turn off the bottom floor. Okay, so now we can see how this is very, very handy for moving through your model. You can turn on and off different layers. You can choose whether you want to see constructions or building geometry that's outside of what you're working on. And you can really quite quickly look at a very focused part of your building or the entire building. Okay, so here we are. And the major change right here is that we need to move these two walls in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is use the SketchUp select tool to select this edge and then hold Control down and select this edge. And then I'll click M and I will move it in. I can hold the green axis down too, and I'll move it in just a bit. Same on this side, those two, M, go until you have the green axis selected, and then click and drag. Now, because we copied the floor plan, the bottom floor up to middle floor, we maintained all of the zoning between them. So we're going to do the same thing and create a new top floor. So first we'll turn the top floor back on so we can reference it. And then I will select the middle floor here and I'll say M and just grab a point here. Remember, I need to copy, so I'll hit Control once to copy, and then I'm going to go up until I get the blue axis and hold shift down so it locks into the blue axis. And I'll just grab a point on the top floor. So then this is floor 2. So now I will select the top floor here. And then, so I've selected the top floor. Remember, I select up on the top bar here to kind of put me back into the building space, and I can hit delete and it removes that top floor. And we can rename floor 2 top floor. The next step here is I'm going to turn on all of my geometry so I can see what's left. Remember, we have some site shading as well. And I'm going to turn off the floor plans because I don't need to see that. So here we have the bottom floor roof, intermediate floor roof, and the top floor roof. I want to delete these as well. And next step, I'm going to automatically generate the roofs and the interior and exterior walls. So I do that by hitting this button right here. So it kind of pops the walls up. It sort of extrudes the walls from the floor plans that we have drawn. And this usually takes a couple of seconds. Okay, so here we go. So I have my floor plans, or I have my floors, I have my exterior walls, I have my interior walls, and then I have roofs. Oops. Let's name that. Okay. And you can see if we mouse over any one of these spaces, the user interface is showing us which surfaces are associated with those spaces. Before we go any further, remember that the floors of these two floors, top floor and middle floor, we want those surfaces to be adiabatic, and then this roof or ceiling and this roof we also want to be adiabatic. So I can do that. I can actually change the construction at the whole sort of entity, floor, roof, or wall level. So let's open our constructions dialog. I'm going to select adiabatic, and then I'll hit B for the paint bucket. And I'm just going to color these entities to be adiabatic. The next step is at the underground floor, which we have down here. And if we look at it, it's an F factor material. So an F factor material means that the loss factor is determined based on the perimeter, the exposed perimeter of any surfaces. It's not a U factor, which is determined based on the surface area of a surface. So what I've done when I click on this is that this goes to a different rendering mode when you're in an F factor material. So this will render when you're in any sort of normal material. This will render as just the constructions assigned to surfaces, and in F factor mode, it will render in a different mode. Now, right now, we don't have any perimeter edges identified, and we can let EP3 automatically identify perimeter edges. And so it's identified all of these edges as perimeter. And so that's actually correct. There are certain cases where, say, a floor is kind of half underground, half not underground, where it might not correctly identify all of those perimeter edges. And if that were the case, we can go into this entity and I can select an edge or two and say add perimeter edges. So now those edges are identified as perimeter, or I can select those edges and then say remove perimeter edges. So now we have the default. When you make changes to your building geometry, it's a good idea to just go into F factor rendering mode and just take a look and make sure that those perimeter edges are correctly identified. And we'll just select a different construction type. So we're back in our normal rendering mode. Okay, so we have our custom floor plan, we have our walls, we have our roofs. Next step is to do our windows. So let's grab an elevation. So this is our south elevation. I'll say Control C. And again, I'm in the general SketchUp geometry. I've X'd out completely of everything. There's no dotted lines surrounded anything that I'm working on. So I'll do Control V, and this is my elevation. And when I paste it in, I want it to be flat, kind of a, like a drawing. It's going to be on the flat XY plane. The next step is to right click it, and you can say Set Elevation. And this is just going to give me a little warning. It says that my building north axis is not equal to 0, which means it can cause a little bit of confusion. So I'm going to say no, I don't want to continue. And I will inspect my building. So I opened up my selected object dialog, and I'll select my building, and I'll just turn this back to 0. And this makes the assigning the elevations to a particular face in the building. It makes it a little bit more straightforward. See, I'm also going to assign the floor plans, or I'm sorry, allow the floor plans to be visible. If we remember, we drew the building geometry to the inside surface of these walls, and I want to align this elevation. These edges here are going to line up with the outside edge of the wall, not the inside edge. So I like having the floor plan there as a reference point when I'm positioning the elevation. Let's assign the elevation. So we have the elevation selected. I'm going to right click and I'll say Set Elevation. I can select an orientation, which is either one of the 4 cardinal directions, or I can also set an orientation numerically. So this would be if you had a 45-degree wall somewhere in the building, you could set 45 degrees here. It's okay if you're off by a couple of degrees. Don't worry about it. EP3 will take care of the rest. In this case, this is a south elevation, so I'll select south. The next step is I need to select a reference point in the elevation. And you can see that I'm getting a context clue down here. And as I mouse around, I have a note on the screen that says to select the reference point in the elevation. So I want to line up this corner here with this corner here. And then EP3 has moved that elevation for me. So we have our elevation set. I'm inside my exterior walls, and I want to start creating windows and doors. And I'd like to be able to trace the elevation. However, if we rotate, you can see there's a little gap between the elevation and the actual wall. That makes it a little bit difficult to trace. So what I'll do is I'll select this wall here, right click, and say Snap Elevations to Face. And that will just bump the elevation right back onto the face. Next step is going to be to create windows and doors. And I'll right click and say Add Window. And this is being created with the default fenestration construction that we selected when we were using the wizard. Kind of like to change the color so that it's a little bit more distinct from the wall color. So just go into my constructions dialog and click on the swatch and make it kind of a blue color. So there we go. So I can set the window properties either by manually setting the window height. Right now I'm in SI units, so let me switch to IP. So I can set my window height here. So let's say it's 4 feet by 4 feet. I can set that here. Or what I usually like to do is I use the SketchUp stretch tool, stretch and move tools, and to position the window right on top of the drawing. So I'll use the move tool by clicking M on the keyboard. I'll grab a corner here, and then I will hit S on the keyboard to get the stretch tool, and I'll just stretch this window out. And remember that the performance information that I have for this window includes the frame. And I'm just going to move it over so it's not hanging off the edge of the wall. When you have a thick wall like this, sometimes you will end up with windows where on the elevation, the edge of the frame will sort of overlap with some of that framing, and you'll need to adjust the window locations just a little bit. So once I have one window, it's actually going to be the same window on this other side here. So I can actually copy this over using a SketchUp tool. So I'll use M, I'll click a corner, and I'll hit Control to put it in copy mode. And I can just go straight across, and if I hold down Shift while I have the red axis selected, I can just inference and place it right up against the edge of that wall. And then next I want to do this surface. So I'll right click, snap elevations to face, and I can keep working. Add window, locate it, stretch it, and then I'm going to copy it onto this other window. This small one I can just copy this way and then stretch to fit. And right now that handle is hidden, so I'm going to hit B to go in X-ray mode, and it will show me that handle. I'm also going to hide my floor plans, which will make the view a little bit less messy. And then V again to get out of X-ray mode, move, Control to copy, and copy this window. Let's see. Snap elevations to face. And I need to add a door. You notice there's not an option to add a door. It's just add window. And the reason for that is that window and door components in EP3 are actually the same. The difference is just in the material. So I will create this door, and then we'll go up to our constructions. And we have, let's see, do we have a door construction here? Residential entrance door fenestration. So this is if we had a glazed entrance door. Right click, snap elevations to face, add window. I can position it, and same thing here. And then once it's sized, I'll just move it over a little bit. Let's close this to give us some room. And then same thing, I can just copy this over and copy this over. Okay, so the upper floors, the windows are going to be similar, but not exactly the same. I'm going to hide my exterior geometry just for a moment. I have an extension called Selection Toys, so I'm going to use that to select only the window components. So I'm going to grab everything here. So when I go left to right, it will select everything that's completely surrounded. And I'll right click, and these are Selection Toys options. So you need the Selection Toys extension in order to get this, but I will say select only components. I'm also going to select an edge, which will help me locate these. So what I'm doing is I'm going to copy and paste this into a different floor. Actually, I don't want this edge. I'll take this edge. I'll say Control C, and then I'm going to go into my middle floor exterior walls, and I'll say Control V. There we go. And I can use this edge to position my windows. Now these two on the edge, if we remember that that was the location where that wall changed a little bit, so I can move those. And now let's view our exterior geometry and see what we're working with, because everything is going to be a little bit different on this floor. Okay, so first of all, right here, it's a little bit hard to see, but this, remember we had balconies here, so this is a balcony railing. So these are full height doors that are hidden by the balcony railing. So I'm going to select these two windows, and I can actually stretch both of them at once. I'm also going to change the glazing type to be this door glazing type. So now let's snap elevations to face. This window here is actually a window this time, not a door. So we'll change the size, and then I can get a different construction type. So it's paint bucket, and I'm holding down Alt to select a different construction, and then I just paint it. Okay, these windows here look okay, and I think this situation is going to be the same where we have full height doors. So again, select both, stretch tool. Now I need to use this see-through V to get that bottom, and I can just inference any lower edge. B for paint bucket, 1, 2, there we go. So now that I have this level and the top level are going to be exactly the same. So let's turn off our outside geometry. Again, I'm going to select all of these surfaces, and then right click, select only components, and I'm going to grab a reference edge too, Control C, go into top floor, Control V, and oops, let's see, yes, everything is selected. It doesn't really matter where you place it. You place it kind of far away and then move it with precision later using your reference edge. So there we go. So very quickly we have all of our south windows in our building. I'm going to go through the same process with the north elevation, and I'll just do it at kind of a normal pace. So first of all, I'm going to copy and paste the north elevation into my SketchUp EP3 model. Right click, set elevation. This time I'll say north. Again, I'm going to grab a reference point here. I'll turn on my floor plans. And I want that reference point now on the north side. There we go. And then starting on the lowest floor, I'll go in and I'll say right click, snap elevations to face. And if we show the geometry, we can see that it has moved the elevation to this face, and it's also turned off that south elevation so it's not kind of messy and in our way. We turn off the floor plans to make it a little bit easier to see. And then I'll just go in and start creating windows. Here I can grab my window here, Control C, Control V, and I'm just going to grab this center point and position it there. I can do the same thing actually with all of these windows. Oops, but these ones are different. So we'll do them custom. So add window, position it, and stretch it. Snap elevations to face, add window, position and stretch. Copy, and let's hide these elevations. Let me grab all of these windows, right click, select only components. I'll select a reference edge 2, Control C. Go into the middle floor, Control V. First, I'll bring these two windows back. And let's turn on the outside geometry again so we can take a look. So same situation here with these two end windows. And actually, these two in the middle, these are actually all going to be full-length doors. So we'll change the material for those. Oops. That's not the right material. There we go. This one is not a door. So when you're using the stretch tool to size windows, you want to make sure that you have the window itself selected when you start stretching. If you have the wall selected, when you start stretching, it's going to do some funny things. So make sure you have the window selected. Let's just make sure those windows are appropriate. Okay, good. We'll hide the other geometry and we'll grab just the windows by saying select only components. I'll grab a reference edge, then Control C. Control V. And there we go. Now on the floor plans, we can see that there are a couple of windows on these other faces, but we're not going to do that at the moment. This is as far as we're going to go with the windows. But here you can see in a matter of a couple of minutes, we generated our custom floor plans and added our windows to our faces. That concludes our tutorial on creating custom floor plans and elevations. Tune back in. Next time, we're going to take a look at efficiency measures and more information about internal loads.